about 20% of the carbon dioxide that we're putting into the planet. Schemes that make it more practical to reforest the planet sound like a good idea. They're certainly worth looking at.
The biggest unintended consequence of aerial reforestation is that you're creating a monoculture. You're creating essentially a tree farm. And what we want is not a tree farm, but a forest.
Mark Hodges understands reforesting from the air involves risks, but he thinks the risks of doing nothing are greater. Replanted forests may help lower global temperatures, but forests take decades to grow, and global warming already has a big head start. One scientist thinks we can clean up greenhouse gases with the flick of a switch.
Dit programma wordt aangeboden door Shell. Let's go. Tot zo.
An oil spill may be a rare disaster off the coast of the US, but here in the Niger Delta, they stopped keeping count long ago. Over the last 50 years, between 9 and 13 million barrels of so-called black gold are thought to have been spilled in this region of swamps and natural resources. It's an ecological catastrophe on a par with the current disaster in the Gulf of Mexico, though one that rarely makes the headlines.
Discovery Energy Zone wordt aangeboden door Shell. Let's go.
Just here, even in this little area, when we were fishing, we used to catch something, but now we struggle all the way to Bonny, and still we get nothing.
Some local people are worried about the potential health risks.
We are inhaling all these things every day, and that gives us diseases, sickness, not only my family, the entire community.
20 million people live in the Niger Delta, crisscrossed with pipelines.
Dit programma wordt aangeboden door Shell. Let's go.
Ik ben ook zonneaanbieder, maar vooral investeren in zonne-energie. Dit is zonne-energie op zijn best. Er zijn 24.000 spiegels. Nee, ik ben gek, ze zorgen helemaal niet bij de Rabobank.
Internationaal zaken doen. De Rabobank gaat verder. Rabobank, een bank met ideeën.
Wordt aangeboden door Shell. Let's go. Welkom terug.
Most scientists believe man-made greenhouse gases are causing global climate change. Professor David Keith wants to build machines to undo that damage.
Ideally, we want something that uses very little energy and also captures a huge amount of CO2 per unit time.
Each day, humans pump excess carbon dioxide into the air by the megaton. Dr. Keith believes we can pump it back out again through a vast network of carbon scrubbing machines. Each scrubber would take air in through giant vents. Chemicals inside the machine would then bind with the carbon dioxide and remove over 50% of it. David's plan has caught the attention and concerns of many climate scientists.
If you could take the CO2 out of the atmosphere directly, and if you could figure out how to keep it away for a long time, that's carbon sequestration. I think that's a great idea.
Another interesting point about carbon capture from the air is that it could be done anywhere by anyone. It doesn't require international cooperation by everybody.
What we want to do is build a laboratory prototype, a machine that takes carbon dioxide directly out of the air.
But for David Keith and the team, major design obstacles stand in the way.
No one's ever combined these components before.
And powering this experiment may create more CO2 than it removes from the air.
5.1, 5.2.
In energy terms, this isn't working very well at all.
If Keith's machines eventually begin to work, where will we store the billions of tons of captured carbon? And what would happen if it ever escaped?
That went seriously quickly. If we have short-term large releases, then there's actually a health issue. The carbon dioxide in large concentrations could cause asphyxiation of humans or other life forms.
What is certain is that there are going to be unintended consequences of any such scheme, and it's the least understood part of the planet.
Of all the planetary features that affect our climate, none is more important than the oceans. Warm and cold currents distribute solar energy and regulate our weather. But now there's another environmental factor shaping our climate. Rising levels of carbon dioxide, CO2 that will remain in the atmosphere for at least the next 100 years.
It's not enough for us to stabilize emissions. We have to radically reduce emissions because every molecule that was put there by my parents, by your parents, by our grandparents, is still there, still affecting the climate.
If replanted forests and scrubbing machines can't eliminate excess CO2, there may be hope offshore. Dr. Brian von Herzog wants to harness the carbon-absorbing powers of the oceans to combat global warming.
Being able to absolutely eliminate those carbon dioxide emissions would be an incredible goal to achieve.
Brian's working with Professors Dave Carl and Ricardo Letelier, experts from the University of Hawaii and Oregon State University. And these little guys, plankton, the microscopic plants and animals of the sea.
All right.
It's unbelievable this stuff exists in a world you don't normally see.
Phytoplankton are tiny plants that grow near the surface. Through photosynthesis, they absorb carbon dioxide and then emit oxygen. About 90% of all the oxygen produced on the planet. When they die, some of the plankton sink to the ocean floor, taking with them the carbon trapped in their remains. Dr. von Herzog and his colleagues think they can get plankton to reproduce in numbers great enough to absorb nearly all the excess CO2 heating up the planet. The only way to make plankton reproduce exponentially is to feed them huge stores of nutrients from the ocean's lower depths.
It's never been done. What we want to do is a natural experiment. This is really the only way we can test this idea.
We use wave energy to actually pump water up to the surface.
And we need your help to get this pump into the water and then to find out what impact it had on the phytoplankton.
The scientists want to build huge tubular pumps that would use wave action to raise nutrient-rich waters to the surface from 300 meters down. The nutrients would stimulate blooms of plankton, large enough to absorb excess carbon dioxide from the atmosphere.
About 17 foot long, you said?
Maybe as long as this boat.
To test the plan, the team will try to design ocean pipes, easy to launch on turbulent seas.
Yeah.
Strong enough to take a beating from powerful currents. And deep enough to raise hope that we may be able to reverse climate change for good.
We've got a glider, $150,000 floating on its own in the ocean. It's a giant dollar bill without an anchor.
We're all dying to see whether these pumps are working. We want information now.
But some climate scientists see trouble below.
All massive undertakings have unintended consequences. If we can't keep the CO2 locked up at the bottom of the ocean, so to speak, the problem is that it diffuses back through the ocean, it makes the ocean more acidic, and it eventually releases back out into the atmosphere, continuing the problem of climate change.
You can't predict the consequences. You are taking a big hammer to an ecosystem that we understand very poorly.
The ocean is home to billions of creatures. Some scientists think this experiment could damage or even destroy their delicate ecosystem.
In areas where there are excess nutrients now, we very often get harmful algal blooms, algae which produce toxins which are poisonous to man and other animals. It's entirely possible that some of these artificial plankton that we're producing would be of the harmful variety.
The biggest unintended consequence is that we could essentially kill much of ocean life. That would not be a good trade-off for being able to pollute for another couple decades.
Others think ocean pipes are acceptable risks.
Bringing up cold water cools the surface, and that has a small contribution to cooling the planet. And so just the physics of bringing up cold water, if you do it on a big enough scale, can help keep the climate cool.
The research is really good, it's really interesting, and we might learn a lot of things that help us, because that ocean is so big and it matters so much, and anything that really lets you understand what the ocean is doing is good.
While the debate on geoengineering intensifies, the experts agree on one major point. Global warming will continue unless we change the way we power our world.